It feels like yesterday that we were going into week number 1, but here we are, week 18, win and get in for a lot of teams, but we're going to talk about it. Our game picks, power rankings, best bets, even some coaches. Let's talk about it. We're going to kick it off here talking about some coaches. If we were the GM, would we give them one more year or would we just fire them and move on and go after a Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel, someone of that nature? Now, Amir and I have gathered a list of 8 coaches here, of course, that either have that are on the hot seat, pretty much. Starting here with Antonio Pierce. Amir, let's just get into it here and we can go through these kind of quickly. Antonio Pierce, he's a player's coach. We know that, but it hasn't been pretty in the year and a half that he's taken over as the head coach. Now, we know the players love him and want him to be the head coach going forward, but does the GM see it that way? They were in a prime position to get Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward at the number 1 pick, and then Antonio Pierce went out there and won them a game, and now they aren't in a position for either. Amir, to me, I'm going to give him one more year for the simple fact that the players love him that much. I think the GM will see that, but if you were the GM, you giving him one more year, or you just firing him and moving on?
You brought up a great point. He's a great players coach and a great motivator. And me personally, I don't condone tanking just because it's hard to convince the guys they got to feed their family and
Right.
earn more contracts to go out there and lose. But I'm going to say fire just from the standpoint, for the Raiders got a completely clean house. I mean, the Raiders just seem like they're all over the place. Offensively, they don't look good. Defensively, they're up and down. And they have some pieces. And I think if you're going to go out and grab a guy like Ben Johnson, or you have the opportunity to grab Ben Johnson, and potentially, get a franchise QB in the draft, I think you should be doing everything you can to bring a guy like that in.
Absolutely. It's been too long since the black and silver have been on top of the league. For Brian Daboll, I'm going to give him one more year here in New York. Now, again, rookie season, amazing rookie year, Amir. I think he was one of the best. I don't remember. I think he was coach of the year. Regardless, he leads the Giants to the playoffs, something they haven't done at the time in a very long time. And they win the first round?
Yeah.
Regardless, due to that first season that they had with him as the head coach, they had to pay Daniel Jones, and they were kind of backed into a corner with that situation. Obviously, we all thought, I think even they knew, that he was getting a lot more money than he should have. But again, they needed a quarterback, and he was the guy that just led them to one of their farthest points at that point in time. So they had to pay him. And I think now we know, of course, he's cut. He's with the Vikings. That was just a mistake that we knew at the time, and ultimately it ended up being one here for the Giants. Now, Amir, I'm still going to give him one more year. I think now he has a fresh slate. He can choose his quarterback, and he can go from there, hopefully to turn this franchise back into the right direction with that talented defense. Amir, are you with me here? Are you going to give Dayball one more year?
Now, I'm with you on this. I say give him one more year. You brought up an amazing point. The fact that, Daniel Jones sort of played good enough to earn that contract. And me and you always say, pay your quarterback because it's hard to find a guy that can,
Absolutely.
play well for your franchise. And they will kind of had to deal with that. And I think now, you go ahead and you draft a guy early. Cam Ward or Shedeur. It should be Shedeur, hopefully. But I mean, they just won a game and move down in a draft position of it.
Yes.
And so I think for the Giants, bring him back one more year, see what happens. Possibly bring in a different play caller, make some changes in that, but bring him back for a year.
As much as Malik Neighbors kind of hinted that he wanted Shedeur Sanders, well, he didn't play like it. I think he just had 2 touchdowns, 7 receptions. Crazy game from Malik Neighbors last week to get a big-time win and end the Colts season. Now, one of the Colts' rivals are the Jacksonville Jaguars. Amir, another coach that was brought in and had an electric rookie season. Doug Peterson came in with Trevor Lawrence. They went to the playoffs, and then they had like a 20-point comeback in the wild card round against the Chargers. One of the craziest comebacks in recent memory. And then, to go into last year, they were like 8-1 or 9-1 at the midseason mark. Everyone thought that they could really be a true contender. But something switched at that midseason mark. Players looked unmotivated, they looked frustrated, and the team fell apart that second half of the year. And really, it hasn't gone back in the right direction since. So he's had a bad year and a half here as the coach. And not that I don't think that he can be a good head coach for this team going forward. I think it's the fact that we need to see what Trevor Lawrence truly is. He came in to be looked at as a generational quarterback, Amir. Maybe, you could argue when he was drafted, people would have been saying he could be the best quarterback in the league one day. He's not there
Mhm.
yet, and I think it's because of the head coach. Get a young offensive head coach, and let's see what we got in Trevor Lawrence. Amir, I'm going to fire him. Are you?
Yeah, I'm firing them right away. Doug Peterson has completely been disappointing. Last year, Jacksonville started off hot, and me and you both were talking about it half the year. Like, hey man, Jacksonville could be a sleeper team.
Yes.
And then T. Law sort of got banged up a little bit. He hurt his knee, if I'm not mistaken. And after that, T. Law was still playing well, but the entire team just went downhill. And I think at this point, cater to your quarterback, bring in a new guy, new system, new culture, and fix it for him.
Absolutely. Now, Gerard Mayo, Amir, here in New England, he was the heir apparent to the greatest coach of all time in Bill Belichick. I'm just going to get to it. I'm going to fire him. I'm not a big fan of Gerard Mayo. I
Yeah,
understand that he was kind of given this position 3 to 4 years ago, is what the reports say.
yeah.
But honestly, I don't think he's got the right guy. And to me, Amir, coming into this draft class, I said it on this channel the entire offseason. I think Drake May is the best quarterback in this class. I want to see it happen, and I don't think Gerard Mayo's the guy to get it done. So even though it's only 1 year, I think the
Mhm.
team kind of looked terrible from start to finish. I know they don't have the talent, but still, I'm going to fire Gerard Mayo and go see if I can get a Mike Vrabel or someone of that still has connections to this franchise.
So for me, I was going to lean towards one more year, just because I mean, at the end of the day, this team sucks, and
And
so,
yes, and yes,
I'm not the biggest fan of Mayo either. There's plenty of games where his late game situations and stuff are not the greatest, but I think at this point, the team sucks, the team is struggling, but I'm with you from the standpoint of if I can go ahead and bring in a guy like Vrabel, a guy like Ben Johnson, then I have the opportunity then fire him. But as of
absolutely.
now, I'll see one more year.
Yeah, no, I forgot to mention this also, but Amir, on average, about 6 to 7 head coaches are fired each and every year. We know the Saints' job is already open, and we know the Bears' job is already open, even though I forgot here, as you reminded me. But so that's already two. So at least four of these guys, either on this slide or this slide, are probably going to be open here for a new face in 2025. Now, these coaches outside of Brian Callahan are coaches that are experienced coaches. They have been the head coach for at least a couple years now. They just haven't been able to take their talent and go over the top to either make the playoffs or to win playoff games. So Shane Steichen, Amir, of course, incredible offensive mind. He's just had quarterback issues ever since he's been in Indy. Of course, he had Richardson, he drafted, and then he got hurt, and then Minshew had to take over. He had a great season with Minshew, but they couldn't close the deal to make the playoffs last year. Then this year, you got Flacco, Richardson, then back. It was Richardson, Flacco, then back to Richardson. Hasn't been great for them all year. But I'm going to give him one more year, right? I'm going to give him one more year. I think for Shane Steichen this offseason, the biggest thing, who is your quarterback? Whether if it's Richardson or you go out there and sign or draft one, go pick your quarterback and go die on the hill that you want to, I guess, pick here. Amir, are you giving him one more year or are you firing him?
I'm giving him one more year, and he's a great offensive mind, like you mentioned, and we saw him. Last year we saw them be a missed check on the way from being the
Yes.
Texans and making the playoffs. And honestly, this combo probably wouldn't even be happening. And quarterback changes are completely killing this team, killing them. And so, if I'm the coach, I will focus more on first of all fix that defense. The defense has been bad all year.
Yes.
Second of all, if Flacco doesn't come back, bring in a guy that can truly be a true safety blanket for Richardson either getting hurt or just underperforming. Because at this point, I mean, it's going into year three, and the biggest concern for Richardson was drafting him too high, hold him to a higher expectation than he actually is. And I've been saying that for the past year and a half now, and so I think at this point, bring in the vet that can play behind him. Steicher's a great coach; he can make it work.
As a selfish Gators fan, Amir, I've been saying this since last year. Trade for Kyle Pitts. Trade for Kyle Pitts. Get rid of this carousel of mid tight ends that you got. Go out there and get a safety blanket and a guy that you can maybe unlock his potential
Yeah.
in Kyle Pitts. Maybe the draft or maybe the trade price is not that steep, saying that
Yeah.
he's going into a contract year. Mike McDaniel, he's getting there, Amir. He's not getting the playoff wins. Same can be said about Mike McCarthy. But to me, I don't know if there's another coach out there that's going to come in and really produce more than Mike McDaniel, at least
Yeah.
in the new head coach's first year. So I'm just going to stick with Daniel for one more year. And I think after one more year, then you decide what you're going to do with some of these veterans like Tyreek Hill or, some of these guys on the defensive side of the ball like Jalen Ramsey. Amir, what are you doing with Mike McDaniel? I know it's not exciting, but I gave him one more year.
I say stick with him. He's still a great coach, great play caller, great offensive mind as well. He's sort of done a good job of developing Tua, in my opinion.
Yes.
For all the slander Tua gets for not being able to perform against big time teams, people kind of showing Mike McDaniel's record against big time teams. I think that most has to do with Tua sort of struggling at times, and I thought he's done a pretty good job of dealing with that.
For Mike McCarthy, Amir, there for America's team, I think after Dak Prescott went down, it was kind of a foregone conclusion. He was gone. He was going to get fired. But this team has rallied, and they're honestly playing their best football this season in order to save this guy's job. But to me, Amir, for a team of their caliber in the Dallas Cowboys, with the talent that they have, I think that you're at a point where you either got to decide if you're going to go all in, kind of like the Rams did a couple years back,
Yeah,
or if you're just going to kind of break it down and kind of just retool, because Dallas will never rebuild, but retool this team to get back to where they were in the 90s, right?
yeah,
So I'm going to fire Mike McCarthy. I understand the players love him, they want to play for him. But I think for Dallas, you're not going to have any problem getting one of these head coaches with the paycheck that Jerry Jones will give them to come coach this team. So I'm going to fire McCarthy and move on here. Get a younger voice in here for guys like Dak Prescott and just give this team to find a way to ignite the fire that we need to see here in this Dallas offense and just team in general. But I'm going to fire him, Amir. Are you with me here?
So for me, I'm going to keep him one more year. And you kind of hit on that point where it's kind of like this team just has to either retool or really just like go all in.
Yes.
And for the Rams, I mean, the Rams went all in, signed Von Miller. Obviously they had Aaron
Ramsey.
Donald,
Yeah.
Odell, all these guys, and basically they said, all right, look, we're going to put millions and millions and millions of dollars on this 1 year. We might lose them in a year or two, but then we're going to build back up. And the Cowboys got to really figure out what they're going to do. I still think Dak is a good quarterback, and you have to pay him because I mean quarterbacks are rare. That played at a pretty high level,
Mhm.
and I think at this point, and I've been saying it for the past year too. I think it's more so of a culture issue for Dallas, and I think it's not really Mike McCarthy himself that's causing that issue. This has been going on for years and years.
Yes.
I think you brought this up last year where I was like, Dallas is going to look great in the regular season, win 12 games, win 11 games, get to the playoffs and get smoked. And it happened last year, and it's probably going to happen this year if Dak was even healthy, and if they even made it. And so it's a lot more issues than Mike McCarthy on this roster, on this team that they really have to fix.
Brian Callahan, he's a first year head coach, and I'm just going to spoil it for the guys at home. Amir and I, we're both going to give him one more year. This is an offense that has had Will Levis, so we're going to
Yeah,
cut him some slack, right? He's an offensive mind from, of course, he came over from Cincinnati. He stole his or his dad from the Browns, offensive line coach. I wanted to throw that out there for whatever reason, but Brian Callahan, I think he just give him one more year. They have some okay pieces, but
yeah.
ultimately, this is a team that was projected to do way too much this season. Amir, any additional thoughts on Brian Callahan? Would you keep him for one more year? Of course, right here it says you would.
Yeah, I mean, I say keep him. I mean, he just got there. Will Levis sucks. And I should have hyped him up a little bit more than I should have. Going into this year, the team sucks. The roster isn't good. The defense is pretty solid, but offensively, I mean, they have some decent pieces, and we've seen weeks where they have sort of shown hope. But at this point, draft a quarterback, and that's my only concern is like I'm looking at all these draft predictions and seeing them pick receivers and stuff like that and offensive weapons. I know, grab a quarterback. You need one bad.
Yeah. Again, unless you plan on going to grab like a Kirk Cousins, which by the way, apparently he's already talking to Browns executives. We're Browns fans, don't really want to see that happen. Regardless, last week, week 17, Amir and I, we got there in different ways, but both 13-3 on the week. Amir's closing the gap, right? He's 5 games, behind me, but still, we're both about 70% correct rate on the year. It's been a great year here for the channel, and again, we're not perfect, but I'll say we're pretty damn good. Now, what I want to do before we get into our Week 18 picks, Amir, I want to refresh your brain. Not that you need it, but for the ones at home, if you're kind of confused or you just want a refresher on what's at stake here going into Week 18, I'll kind of give you a quick rundown before we get into our Week 18 games. Now, in the AFC side of things, there are 6 spots, 6 teams that are guaranteed a playoff berth. That, of course, is the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Houston Texans. They are division winners, and they will stay that here this week, no matter what their outcome is. For the 5 and 6 seed, it's a little bit interesting. We'll talk about that in a moment. But that, of course, right now is the Steelers and the Chargers. but the 7th seed is still up for grabs. That is between three teams, Amir: the Broncos, the Dolphins, and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Dolphins and Bengals, they need to win, and they need some help. Of course, most notably, the Broncos losing. Now, on the NFC side of things, there's also six teams that are guaranteed spots in the playoff. Three division winners in the Minnesota Vikings, even though they can swap with the Detroit Lions. The Eagles at 2. The 3 is the LA Rams. The Commanders at 6, the Packers at 7. Again, they can swap as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. The only spot up for grabs, Amir, is the winner of the NFC South. It's either going to be the Tampa Bay Bucks or the Atlanta Falcons, who have made a recent quarterback change. So that, of course, is the quick look at the playoff picture 1 week out from the big dance. Now, Amir, I'm going to need a sip of water here, but let's get into it. Week 18, I want to go through what is at stake in the early slate, and of course, we'll do this for the late game slate as well. We're going to start here on Saturday. Now, stick with me here at home. I'm going to give you a reason to watch every single game this weekend. Now, also, no Thursday game tonight, just so you guys know. But Saturday is honed in on the AFC North. We have the Browns going to the Ravens. Baltimore's going to play their starters in the first half. The Browns, they suck. Baltimore should roll. For Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, Cincinnati needs a win, and they need a Denver loss to make the playoffs. For Pittsburgh, if you win, you stay the 5 seed, which is a coveted spot because you go on the road against a struggling Houston Texans team. But if they lose, they'll get the 6 seed and have to go to Baltimore. For Sunday's slate, Amir, New Orleans and Tampa Bay. Tampa needs a win. They control their own fate. Simple as that. But they can also make it if Tampa Bay loses. For Carolina and Atlanta, Atlanta needs a win, and they need Tampa Bay to lose. So, again, that interesting dynamic there. Houston and Tennessee. Houston is playing their starters this week. Again, full game. They're not going to rest them at all throughout the game unless it's a blowout. D'Amico Ryans wants to bounce back from that 31-2 loss there on Christmas. For Jacksonville and Indiana, it's a meaningless game. We'll skip past it. For the Giants going to Philly, Amir, Saquon is sitting. He's not going for the record, and the majority of Philly starters will be sitting in this game. Now for Washington and Dallas, last game in the early slate. Washington, they want to win and secure the 6th seed because at that point they play the Rams, where if they lose, they're going to have to go to Philly. And again, that's a matchup nobody wants at this point in time. Now Dallas is playing spoiler here. They want to not only save Mike McCarthy's job, but also kind of spoil Washington's playoff lives in Jaden Daniels' first season. Amir, your thoughts on this early slate here? That was a lot to unpack. Anything you took away from that?
The one game I want to highlight is that Cincy at Pittsburgh game. I'm taking Cincy just because, this Pittsburgh's defense, that has been the identity and the anchor of this team for years, has been terrible this past 5 to 6 weeks. They have been bad. The pass defense has been really, really bad. We watched Mahomes and the Chiefs carve them up last week, and sort of just this drive, long drives every single possession. I think it's going to be the same thing this week. And in the first match that they had, it was a shootout. But I think this time Joe Burrow wins it. Not saying they make the playoffs because I think Denver beats Kansas City. But I'm taking Cincy.
Yeah, again, I think Pittsburgh. I wanted to do this simply because I want to go Cincy as well. But I think this is another game where, if Pittsburgh wins, that's another game I can get a game on you, Amir. So that's really where I wanted to go with that reasoning. Now let's go to the late slate here. With Chicago and Green Bay. Historic matchup, and almost everybody should play in this one, so maybe we get a sneaky good game here, but of course if Green Bay wins and Washington loses, they will get that coveted 6th seed there in the NFC side of things. For Buffalo in New England gets the number 1 pick with a loss. So that'll be an interesting game because Buffalo is only going to be playing their starters in the first half. So I think New England might start slow on purpose, where it kind of looks like they're trying in the second half, but Mitch Trubisky will be able to do enough in our minds to get them the win there. Now, in the 4 o'clock window, Tua is questionable. He's probably going to sit out this game with that hip injury, and Aaron Rodgers, Amir, I'm just going to say this. It might be the last football game in his legendary first ballot Hall of Fame level career, and he needs 1 touchdown pass to get 500 for his career, so that game is more so to watch it for, I guess, nostalgia reasons. Because, again, it might be number 8's last game in his career. That doesn't even sound right. I'm going to call him number 12 there in Aaron Rodgers. for the Chargers going to Las Vegas, look, LA is going to sit their starters if Pittsburgh wins, because if Pittsburgh wins on Saturday, the Chargers are not going to be moving regardless of their game. So they're going to sit their guys. But if Pittsburgh loses, the Chargers are going to be full throttle. They're going to play their guys. So that's why there's an asterisk there, Amir. And I think you have the same reasoning, where if the Chargers are going to play their guys, I think we're going to take the Chargers in that game. But if not, again, we're going to stick with the Raiders in that one. For Denver going to Kansas City, Denver with a win, they're in. Kansas City's going to rest their starters, and Amir, they're even going to rest the GOAT, Carson Wentz, in the second half of this game. So a lot of backups for Kansas City in this one. They're going to make Denver's job as easy as possible. And honestly, I can't blame them, because I would rather play Bo Nix in the second round if that got to that point than Joe Burrow if it were to get to that point. San Francisco going to Arizona, Brock Purdy's out, and I think that's the reason why we're rolling with Arizona. The last two games here, let's wrap up. Seattle's going to the Rams. The Rams are resting everybody. And Amir, that came out this morning, so if you want to switch, I will welcome
you. Oh, they are?
But for Seattle, you're playing for incentives. Geno Smith, if he gets like 186 passing yards and a touchdown or so, he gets a big payday. So they're going to be airing the ball out. Look to target their receivers in that one. And week 18's closer, last game of the regular season, we know what is at stake. Minnesota, Sunday Night Football, a 14-win ball club, currently resides at the number 1 overall pick. They go to Detroit. It is on the line. Winner gets the 1 seed. The loser gets the 5 seed. Again, if you win, you get the first round bye. The only team in the NFC that would be able to have that honor. And again, first time in history, Amir, a 14-win team will not be the number 1 seed, and they will also be the 5 seed, the first 14-win team ever to do that. Amir, there's a lot to unpack here in this late slate as well. Any thoughts about these matchups? I guess we'll start here in that Jets game. Your thoughts on what potentially could be the last game of Aaron Rodgers' career?
It's really crazy. How quickly this season turned around for the Jets. I mean, me and you both had them winning like 12 games, like 10 games minimum, bare minimum, this year, and winning the AFC East. And then, like, it was just the complete opposite. Rodgers looked like he's just, like, checked out and defeated. Watching him these past, like, 6 to 7 weeks, he's still been playing really well. So I don't think it's over for him. I feel like he would have sort of hinted at that earlier. But, if it is, man, it's going to be crazy to watch that.
Do you think he's a top 10 quarterback of all time, just based on like I guess without really thinking too deep into it? Would he be a top 10 quarterback all time?
I mean, really, honestly, off the eye test and off his pure talent.
Yeah. I mean, pure talent might be top 5.
Yeah, it's right, easily. I mean, his arm talent has been the craziest that we've ever seen. And, I always say it too. I think even now his arm is still better than Mahomes as far as talent, accuracy. Effortless and stuff like that. And Rodgers has been generational.
Yeah. Do you think there's any chance here, I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, with knowing what we know now of Carson Wentz, their backup quarterback's not even going to play in the second half, what are the chances 1 to 10 you think Kansas City can win this game in Arrowhead to spoil their division rivals' hopes?
I'm going to be honest, like if Wentz was playing, honestly, I give KC about a 5.
Yeah.
5 out of 5 because, Wentz is the vet. Andy Reid is a great play caller and coach. But I think at this point, you brought up a great point. I think KC is set on not playing Burrow in his offense in the first round.
Yeah,
because I'm going to be honest, like this offense could score on anybody, any defense. It could be an absolute shootout. And you beat them earlier in the year on a controversial game. So, it's going to be tough to beat them twice. And so I think they're set on letting Denver sneak in.
Speaking about shootouts, Amir, we know that a lot of points are scored at Ford Field. Sunday Night Football, biggest game of the year. Of course, it was scheduled that way, but Detroit at home versus the Minnesota Vikings. I'm rolling with Detroit. Why? Well, I think they need this bye week more than Minnesota going into the playoffs. They're so banged up. They're so injury prone, and we'll talk about our power rankings in a moment, but Detroit has been atop of the league all year. They've just had injury after injury. I wouldn't even say this is an injury bug. Amir, this is an injury disease at this point.
Yeah, this is bad.
I mean, this is a pandemic here in Detroit, but I'm going to roll with them. I think they fight. I think with their mentality, they're going to close off the year on a strong note. And honestly, this might be kind of just my bias here because I want to see this team win so badly. But you're rolling with Minnesota, arguably the hottest team in the league on the road. How confident are you in the Minnesota?
I'm be honest. I'm not confident on either team. I think this is going to be a walk-off field goal game,
Yes.
walk-off touchdown game. Whoever has the ball last is going to win. I'm leaning towards Minnesota just because I've been underrating them the past weeks, and this Detroit defense is not good. Like all the
No,
injuries, it's
not.
bad, man. And watching them last week against San Fran, who's completely just like destroyed by injuries as well. They have been annihilated. But for me. The reason why I was kind of hesitant on Minnesota is because for Detroit, at least offensively, I mean they're basically fully healthy offensively. Aside from Montgomery, the problem is on defense. They can't get a stop, but at the same
No.
time, Detroit's offense can score on anybody. So, but I'm going to lean towards Minnesota. Watching them last week against Green Bay, they honestly smoked Green Bay. A lot more than the score says in my opinion. They dominated them up front, and I think in a game like this, it's going to be way too easy for Darnold and his offense to drive.
Yeah, again, it's hard to argue when Minnesota has the talent that they
It's
do,
tough.
and their biggest strength is Detroit's biggest flaw at this point in time. So that matchup's definitely going to go in the favor of Minnesota. Wonder what the spread on that game's going to be. Of course, we're early in the week, so we're going to have to wait for Sunday to find that final line, I guess is what we'll say. Power rankings week 18. Amir, I'll go through mine kind of quickly. Pittsburgh, despite losing three in a row, they are going to stay in my top 10. I think they're better than the Rams. I think they're better than another team maybe you could argue outside of it, like Cincinnati. So I'm going to give the edge to Pittsburgh at number 10. Chargers move up one spot with their win last week. The Commanders, Green Bay, and Baltimore stay at 6, 7, and 8. I understand that Washington won their game last week, not like the Green Bay Packers, but I think they're also interchangeable. That I'm just going to keep them at 6, 7, and 8. Amir, I hate to do this. I had Detroit. I was so eager early in the year to put them at number one. Of course, and
Yeah,
I had them at number one for so long, and now it's just so many injuries on that
so many
defensive side of the
injuries.
ball. Where I think the better team, objectively, is the Minnesota Vikings. So I have Minnesota at 4, Detroit at 3. Minnesota could be even higher. The Buffalo's at 3. My top 3 stays the same. Philly at 2 and Kansas City at 1. Amir, I was this close to putting Philadelphia over them
Yeah,
for Philly to be the number one team. I think Philly's the hottest team in football.
yeah,
They look like they could do no wrong. But how many times are we going to fall into this trap? Last year, I didn't bet against the Chiefs, even though they were underdogs in a lot of their
yeah.
playoff games. How many times are we going to see where this big bad giant of a team comes out of the NFC, like the Eagles 2 years ago, like the Niners last year, and we just automatically think they're better than the Kansas City Chiefs? Well, they might be better on paper. They might even have more talent, but Patrick Mahomes is going to get it done when it matters most. So I'm going to keep the Chiefs at number 1. Amir, your top 10 starts with the same 3 teams at my bottom of my top 10. Why is that?
Yeah, first of all, I'm gonna be honest. The Rams could very well be in this, but I'm not gonna boost them up. The Rams sort of been cruising through the regular season. Now they're hot, but these bottom 3 teams have been somewhat consistent. But when I got Washington at 10, I've been saying it. I'm not high on Washington. They just don't move me much. But at the same time, I mean, they still win games. They still make plays, and so I have them at 10. At 9, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is still great despite the defensive struggles these past weeks. The coaching is still great. The offense is still really, really solid, and they honestly still somehow, winning games as well.
Right.
Eighth spot out the Chargers. The Chargers have gotten better and better each week. In my opinion, they're better than Pittsburgh and Washington on both sides of the ball up to this point in the season. 7, I have Green Bay. For me, I didn't move Green Bay because Minnesota, is the top 5 team, and
Right.
Minnesota is honestly just that good in my opinion. 6, I have Baltimore. This Baltimore offense is absolutely crazy. They can score on anybody. The defense is honestly playing better too, which is the biggest thing for me too. 5, I have Minnesota, and so Minnesota and Detroit. So I still have Minnesota under Detroit just because the first time they matched up, Detroit still won, and I keep on saying it. This Detroit offense is still keeping them in this conversation, in my opinion. The
Yes.
offense is still basically fully healthy. They can still score on anybody. They still create turnovers. And so this upcoming week, I think these teams are so close to the point where it's like this final game is going to define who's better, in my opinion. And at my 3 spot, I have Buffalo. They're great. And I'm with you on this one. I really thought about putting Philly 1 just because this past week, even though they beat Dallas, I mean, without Jalen Hurts, they completely dominated Dallas, and it goes to show that like outside of their quarterback position, this team is loaded up front on both sides of the ball.
Yes.
Defensively, they're great, and in my opinion, I mean, they're my clear favorite in NFC for sure.
In the AFC, yes. Oh, you're talking about
NFC
the Eagles. Sorry.
Eagles.
Quickly before we get out of here, of course, we like to give you guys our best three player prop, spread picks, and over unders. Basically, our favorite three bets on the week. Amir, for player props, we both went incentive based. I don't know what the line is at for Brock Bowers because that line has not been out yet. But he needs 5 receptions to break Mike Ditka's record for the all-time leader. Why not Mike Ditka, excuse me, but he just needs 5 receptions to be the all-time leader in rookie receptions in a single season. So I'm going to hammer that, right? Whether if it's 5 receptions, 6 receptions, I'm going over because if this is Antonio Pierce's last game, he knows what his players need. Let's go out with a bang. Let's get our guy a record here to close off this season for the Raiders. You're going also with an incentive-based guy, and this is Mike Evans, man. I've been hammering his line here on the show, Amir, and you're going to finish it off here as he has some history on his hands.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, I mean, 85 yards to get his 11th straight 1,000-yard season. I mean, that's something that we know for a fact Baker's going to make sure that he gets, and he has a great matchup of doing that this week. And also, if he gets 5 receptions, he gets an extra $3 million, which is insane. And so, what I'm doing is I'm going to pair these two together. They're both off lines. I believe Mike Evans' receptions line is probably going to be at like 5.5 or 6.5, but I'm hammering 85 yards for sure.
I think they're going to put the lines exactly at like 84 and a half receiving
Yeah.
yards and like 4.5 receptions or 5.5 receptions, right? Just so bettors are for sure going to go over. So if he has an off night, well, Vegas is going to be up a lot of money. Our favorite spread pick on the week. I think it's going to be a blowout for Green Bay. I think they make a statement this week.
Yeah.
You need a big time win. And again, you want to put yourself in a position to get that number 6 seed if Washington loses. So I think you win here and probably, let's say 31-20 here at home versus the Chicago Bears. Amir, you're going with another NFC team, but despite having some starters down, you're going with Philadelphia. Why is that?
I'm going Philly. I watched them last week with a bunch of starters sitting out, absolutely annihilate the Cowboys. And I think this week, the Giants don't want to win. They're better off just resting guys as well. I think Philly is just that talented to where it's like, even their backups could win this game.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big Grant Caltera game, or however you say his name, right? Backup tight end. My favorite over-unders on the week. I'm going to go with an over. Again, I think this is going to be like a 31-20 game. I think Green Bay is going to come out and make a statement at home, and it's going to go over 40.5 points there in this historic rivalry. Could weather play a factor? Yes, but as of right now, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of snow there in Lambeau. So, again, I'm going to go over 40.5 in that NFC South historical matchup. Amir, you're going with an under here, and tell us about that.
I'm going under. The Browns play at one of the slowest paces in the league as far as offensively. We know for a fact Baltimore's going to be resting their guys after the first half,
Yes.
and so this team is going to this is going to be low scoring. The first half might be like 21-0. And Baltimore's going to kind of rest guys, and then it's going to be low scoring in this ugly game.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that game being like 24-3, right?
Yeah.
Just way under the under. No pun intended. Well, if your team sucks, this is your favorite segment of the show, and we save it the best for last because our team sucks in the Cleveland Browns. Now we are, of course, in the mix. This is the race for Travis Hunter, aka the race for the #1 overall pick. As New England, they control their own fate. If they lose, they get the #1 overall pick. Interested to see what they do if they get that pick, though, Amir, because do you trade down, right? Do you trade down and let's stay with the Cleveland Browns or the New York Giants to put yourself in a position to get a Travis Hunter at 4 as well as other draft capital? I think there couldn't be a better situation for the New England Patriots because they have this #1 overall pick. You can go tackle, you can go Travis Hunter at 4, you can go Ted McMillan, Will Johnson to pair up with Christian Gonzalez, which would be absolutely scary, Amir. They have so many options here in New England. So again, a huge thing that they have the #1 overall pick. Tennessee and Cleveland, they move up a spot here to 2 and 3. Cleveland, please, we need one of these quarterbacks to drop to us. The Giants, of course, won a game. They dropped to 4, and Jacksonville hanging around at #5. They're probably going to go after a tackle or a guy like Abdul Carter. Amir, any thoughts on these 5 teams here? And I guess how out of all of these teams, who do you think is going to have the #1 overall pick?
New England for sure. I think this week they lose to Buffalo. Gerard Mayo did come out and say if Drake May's feeling well that they're going to play him, but he's banged up. So at this point, I think even if they're if Drake May plays and they're winning or they're down, halfway through the game, I think he gets rested and he doesn't play.
Yeah, I think it's honestly worth it. You
Yeah,
just take the fine.
yeah,
Let's go out there and get a #1 overall pick.
right. Yeah, and so for New England, I mean, it was honestly in a great spot. You brought it up, a great point. Like, New England can either go out and get Travis Hunter, pair him with Gonzo defensively, which would be insane.
Travis Hunter too, yeah, yeah.
Right? Yeah, pair Travis offensively in certain packages, because the Patriots need a playmaker offensively really, really bad. Or you could trade down, man. Like it's so much they could do. If I'm them, I'm feeling great, feeling well, because I mean you sort of have like five different options to build around your guy and Drake May.
Yeah, I think you've seen all you need to see out of Drake May. I think at this point, you say he's got food poisoning, make sure he sits on the sideline and lose this game against the Buffalo backups. I think, that, honestly, just secure the number one overall pick. There's so many different ways that can benefit your franchise and moves that you can make to benefit your franchise going forward. Amir, that's episode 240. Of course, first episode of the new year. Of course, I want to say thank you to you guys at home. We've gained more than double our subscribers from the first year of the podcast. We've gained over 10,000 subscribers in year number 2. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming across the channel. Amir, any last thoughts here? And of course, first episode of 2025. I mean, feels good.
No last thoughts.
Well, we'll see you guys next week. Of course, much anticipated playoff preview matchups, or episode rather, the wild card round. We'll see you guys then.